Hello, viewers. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching me from. Welcome to today's episode of Real Estate Talk with Landlady Jane. Yes, permit me to use this great opportunity to say Happy New Month to all my viewers out there. Yes, those who are celebrating their birthday in the month of May. I'm wishing you all happy birthday in arrears, and those that have celebrated, I am celebrating with you. I'm wishing you all a happy birthday. Yes, I also want to thank you all for all your prayers and wishes on my birthday. Yes, I feel honored by all your wishes, your prayers, and all that. So I pray that God will keep making it possible for us to see more birthdays and birthdays. Yes, so on today's episode of Real Estate Talk with Landlady Jane, we are going to be talking about landlords and tenant laws in Nigeria. Yes, so if you're a landlord, this program is for you today. If you're a tenant, bring your chair closer. We have something to talk about. So, actually, landlord and tenant laws depend actually on the states, different legislators and their laws and all that, but then there are specific ones that are general for everybody. Yes, specific ones for everybody. Tenancy laws like the Land Use Act 1978, and in some cases the customary courts. Yes, there are some that are common to everybody, to every state. Yeah, so tenancy law can be written or can be an oral agreement, but it is very it is very legal to get it written. Yeah, it's not everything cannot be oral or be an oral agreement. You can get it to get it if you get it written, it is more legal and all that. So any tenant law that you have with your tenant or with your landlord, please make sure it is written and signed by both parties. Yes, if you have something like that. But if you are doing on verbal agreement, it depends on how well you trust each other on this. So we are going to start by reading out the landlord. You're not a landlord like this. Yeah. If you're not a landlord, try to be one. So actually, let's talk about what a landlord is. Yes, you know, so many people, they see it as a title. They want to be addressed as a landlord and all that. But I think uh, becoming a landlord is more than what a common man would think it is. Yes, because you have your responsibility as a landlord. You are like a father to the tenants in your apartment. Yes, you have more responsibilities, both legal responsibilities and all that. So it is not just the title landlord, no. And remember that just owning a property does not really make you a landlord. Yes, it is you knowing your duties and what you are supposed to do and what you are not supposed to do, and your rights, and know the laws, do the things you are supposed to do that makes you a landlord. Being the sole owner of a property, yes, also it is also one of them. Being the sole owner of a property also makes you a landlord of a particular property. So today on the show, we are supposed to have a landlord here, an owner of a property who would have been here to kind of tell us his or her experience about being a property owner and all that. But unfortunately, our guests could not make it to the studio today, and of course, the program will have to go on. Yes. So number one in our list about landlord's rights is a right to receive rent as and when due. And of because a landlord has to receive his or her rent as at when due. It is your right, it is your legal right to receive your rent as and when due. It is one of your rights legally, yes, as a landlord. Yeah, that's the first one on our list. Now the second one in our list is right to increase rent period to notice, often 6 months. Remember, you can increase your rent, but you have to give a reasonable excuse for increasing the rent. You have a right to do that, and you also have to bring up a reasonable excuse for increasing your rent. It's not because Mr. A has increased their rent, then you want to increase your own rent and all that. No, but then you have the right, at least increasing your rent. It can be 6 months notice, can be 1 year, depending on the tenancy of your the tenancy rates of your tenant, so you have the right to do that as a landlord. And also you have right to evict tenants who default, but you have to follow the due process. Yes, nobody said you cannot evict a tenant who defaults or who you don't want in your property, but there is a way you go about it. You have to use the right process to do it, so you don't end up putting yourself in trouble and all that. So we also have right to inspect the property with reasonable notice. Yes, you have right to inspect your property to at least know when the property is being misused, and you could be able to correct things when at as on time. Yeah, because you don't inspect your property, you don't even come around, and tenants may tend to do whatever they want to do. After all, landlord is not around, he doesn't even send anybody to nobody send anybody here. They do whatever they want to do, but then you as a landlord, you have the right to inspect your property. Yes, you have the right to do that, but you have to at least give a reasonable excuse or notice for that. Yes, you have the right to compensation for charges caused by your tenants. Yes, your tenant damages your property. It is your legal right to go for compensation, because someone cannot just come and destroy what you have built and go scot-free like that. Yes, as a landlord, you have the legal right to to demand for compensation if a tenant destroys anything or damages anything in your property and the person is not repairing it or something. So you have the right for compensation if such thing occurs. So yes, I've listed 5 of them: right to receive rent, right to increase rent, right to evict a tenant who defaults following due process. Don't forget due process. Yes, right to inspect your property, and right for compensation in case if there is any damage on it. So remember, we are reading the laws. Yes, so these laws is uh, Lagos State laws as at 2011. Yes, and this is applicable to every other state. This is common to every other person out there. Yes, wherever where you are, this law covers you as a landlord. Now that's all for the landlord. Yes, that's all for the landlord. So let's calm down and know the tenant rights. So if you're a tenant, come over here, come and know your rights as a tenant. And we also pray that all tenants shall become landlords. Such prayer is a nice one. So tenant rights, you have right to peacefully enjoy the property. Yes, you have, once you have paid for a property, you have rights to a peaceful environment. Yes, you don't have to tolerate anybody coming to disturb you or all that. No, you have a right to peaceful enjoyment of the property, right to written notice before eviction or rent increment. Yes, just like a landlord has the right to increase his or her rent, or a right for eviction, you also demand a right for a notice. Whenever such thing wants to happen to you, you need a notice for that. It's your right to demand for a notice, and the landlord cannot just come and start evicting you today. No, there should be a notice to that, and you have a right to that notice as a tenant. Now you also have right to fair and habitable premises. Yes, if the compound is not conducive enough for you, if you are not relaxed enough about your environment, you have the right to put it in place how you want it to be, provided you're not damaging anything for the property owner. Yes, you can put it in place how you feel it should be. Yes, you have the right to do that as a tenant. You also have right to recover part of rent just in case you are being evicted before your rent expires. You have the right to demand for your money. Yes, if you're for at the remaining part, like if your rent is supposed to expire by say uh, December, and you are being evicted in June, or you are being evicted in August, you have the right to demand for the rent. Yes, because you still have some money to use, but you are not allowed to, so you have the right to recover it pending on the agreement. Then you have the right to sue for unlawful eviction or harassment. Yes, in case you are being harassed in a compound or so you have the right to sue, because everybody has their boundaries. There are things a tenant should do, there are things a landlord should do, and there are things they should not do as well. So when you feel you are being harassed for anything in your compound, you have the right to sue the person for any unlawful eviction or harassment. So that is it all for tenants, landlord rights. Yes, yeah, you could add so many rights, but please add the ones that are lawful. Yes, we are talking about lawful rights now, not just a right that was just created and it becomes a custom and people begin to abide by it or so. So now we have a eviction process. There are process to these things, in as much as a landlord has the right to evict a tenant. There are process to all this. There are procedures to all this which you must follow before you could do all that. So we have serve the correct notice to quit. Yes, you have to serve the correct notice. So many landlords have been forming quick notice. They will just write it at the comfort of their homes, and they feel that once they serve it to you, you are going to be scared and like all that. No, there are processes you should use. Please, when you want to serve a quick notice, use the law to do that. Don't just do that on your own. And if you have a tenant that refuses to vacate, you also have, after the quick notice has expired and the tenant has refused to vacate, you can also serve 7 days notice. And when this 7 days notice is not being obeyed, the next thing you do, you file an application, you go to law. There are offices who are in charge of these things. Then you report to them because you have done your own part, and you don't have rights to evict a tenant. So what you do is you write an application to the magistrate or the high court in charge. Then on doing this, it's only the court that has a legal right to evict a tenant. Yes, they know how they are going to go about it. So the landlord is not permitted to have self-help on a victim tenant. There is something called self-help, like locking the property or throwing their things outside, or all those illegal way of eviction. When you do that, the tenant has an upper hand upon you already. You do that, the tenant can sue you for harassment and unlawful eviction. So for you not to fall into that victim, you go to the right right place. Go to the magistrate, go and write an application, and they will take it up from there. Yes, so there's also something called rent control. Yes, a landlord also have a right to rent control, but this varies in states. It depends on where you are and the the control rents that are being applied on that part of the state where you are. But I know that the one that is common to everyone is the tenancy law 2011. Yes, so where it says landlord cannot demand for more than 1 year rent in advance for a residential property. Yes, there was a time in our lifetime where people were demanded, people will be asked to pay 2 years rent before you can before you can get an apartment. You are supposed to pay for 2 years and all that. So as of 2011, such thing were stopped by the law that only 1 year rent is okay. Whereby you feel you want to do 2 years, that should be at your own comfort zone. That should be, it depends on what your pocket is saying. One might decide, okay, I want to do 2 years. That is, nobody has mandated you to do that. You just want to do it probably because the money is there at that time and all that, and you don't want to start talking about rent in the next 2 years. So you can pay on your own, but the law says that nobody has the right to demand for 2 years rent from a tenant, from a new tenant. And also the land aid for renewal, you also have, I don't know if people know about this, but a landlord cannot demand for more than 6 months rent when you are renewing. Yes, you can actually renew your rent in 6 months. It must not be every year you pay. You can renew 6 months. After 6 months, you pay for 6 months, then you kind of pay the remaining one in the next 6 months. You can share your money into two and pay it. I don't know how many people know about this, but then it is a law and you are not defaulting if you decide to pay like that. But I know that some landlords are also doing that. They are taking half rent and all that. So it is not bad and it is not unlawful if you want to do that. Then violating a law as a landlord can lead you to fine. You have to pay some fine to, and or even to jail. At least I know that those penalties, someone can actually go for 3 months imprisonment for that. So please, if you are my precious landlord here, if you are an amazing landlord, please do not take laws into your hands so that you don't go to jail because of something you could have avoided. And then because you know that some tenants are also smart enough and they know all these things. So when you're dealing with such people, please try to use the law to fight it for you. You don't fight it for yourself, because in as much as you have right to law, your tenant also have right to law. So everybody is being abided by law. So let's use it to do that. So that is it all for today. So we are not going to be talking much on this landlord and tenants laws in Nigeria, which most people knows and most people do not know. But if you know, then it's good that you know. But if you don't know, you have known it today, and whatever you need, whatever questions you have, you can drop it on the comment section so that we'll answer your questions, and you get to know things you don't know and the things you're supposed to know. So don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Landlady Jane, and on TikTok and at Landlady Jane, YouTube at Landlady Jane, and also my phone number still remains +234 60363102. I repeat again, +234 60363102. Don't forget the topic for today is landlord and tenant rights, which we have talked about, and we talked about the landlord rights, right to receive tenant as and when rent as and when due, right to increase rent with prior notice, right to evict tenants, right to inspect the property with a reasonable notice, right to compensation in case of any damage. If you damage your landlord property and he's demanding for compensation, it is not unlawful. Now, we also talked about the tenant rights. You have right to peaceful environment, right to written notice before eviction or rent increment, right to recover part of the rent of eviction before your rent expires. You also have a right to sue for unlawful eviction or harassment. And also, we talked about eviction process, how you go about eviction if you want to do that. And we also talked about rent control. So until we come again your way next week, I still remain Landlady Jane. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for this. And if you are listening up to this moment, please DM me and I have a gift for you. Thank you so much. Bye.